First, I know you've seen this statement from the Reserve Bank at 1:12 this afternoon, so during the meeting. And it says, the South African Reserve Bank Governor, Xolani, has appointed Dr David Fowkes to serve as a member of the Monetary Policy Committee from the 12th of January. So he's already been at the job for 13 days. This is the first we hear of it. And he was appointed as an advisor to the governors on the 1st of December 2023 after being at the bank since 2013. So from December to now, he's had a little bit of a promotion.
Yes, it's a huge promotion, really, to sit among the top 5 like that, to determine the trajectory of the interest rates for the country. It's a huge thing. But what should be calming the market, I'm sure, right now, is that he's not new to the institution itself. He's been there for 11 years. So it's not something that one would, if you were in a market player, you'd be worried who's in there. But all those people who are in there have got impeccable records, and it would seem, having spent 11 years, he's got staying power there, and quite a good appointment, it would seem.
Continuity matters for investors, matters in policy, and he's the ultimate expression of that.
And they didn't wait, Stephen. They didn't wait to ease him in on the job. And he's already been part of the first decision, although one would assume that he would have gone with the flow of the other 4. But it's good to see that there is some stability in the Reserve Bank MPC, so that the numbers are not 4. There is the Reserve Bank governor to still make that final decision, but it is a good one to be made. And as we heard, the deputy governor, Naidu, who has left, who hasn't announced where he's going, he's on garden leave as we speak, as he is appointed by the president, and the Reserve Bank governor is also appointed by the president, and Xolani as the governor appoints the rest. So it's a good appointment, it would seem.
All right, let's get to the decision then. Interest rates on hold, a unanimous decision at that. And really hard to argue with. If you look at where inflation is at the moment, the governor's saying it towards the end, their policy is still restrictive. In other words, he believes, and the policy committee believes, is still holding the economy back. But clearly there's still a lot to worry about.
There is a lot to worry about. If you read this was the shortest statement from the Reserve Bank, by the way, I've ever heard from him. Usually they last 20 minutes. This was just 12 minutes. And there are a number of things in there. Something that is quite interesting is that at the end of the statement is what he has repeatedly said, particularly since 2020, that the monetary policy we are taking care of the monetary policy of the Reserve Bank. It's time for the government, the state, to take care of the fiscal policy right now, sending a strong message about the budget deficits, the problems that the debt to GDP ratio that is there when it comes to government, the debt that is constantly rising, and of course the sluggish economic growth that we've been having to say. Do something about it. It is within your hands. We've done all we can as the MPC, and now it is in your hand. He didn't say anything last year as far as that statement is concerned, but it's back now, and it's quite interesting that he says that since early 2020, the committee has recommended additional means of strengthening economic conditions, including achieving a prudent public debt level, increasing the supply of energy, keeping administered price inflation low, and wage growth in line with productivity gains, telling the government that you can't be accepting high wages when it comes to the civil servants, something that we have seen. They tried to keep the line for as long as possible since 2020, not moving, that is the government, not moving on those salaries when you look at the public sector. But we know they gave in a couple of months ago, and according to what he said, here. It's just a mere statement, straightforward, but if you read between the lines, it's saying that you're not pulling your weight, you're not doing what you're supposed to do on the fiscal policy side.
As you say, he's been saying this for ages.
Yes.
I mean, it's really about the governor and the politicians. Food price inflation. So we saw from the figures yesterday, the food price inflation finally beginning to come down. Still quite high. I think still nearly 6%. He pointed specifically to eggs, so avian influenza. We always call it aviation influenza, but avian influenza. And potatoes suddenly having a little bit of a spike at the start of this year as well. The main point here is that food price inflation is suddenly very unpredictable, which is very bad news.
It's very bad news if you even read the statements from Stats SA when it comes to inflation in December. Yes, coming down, cooling off in December, and it's quite important to look at November that it was quite high, but just a marginal drop. The thing about this is that even when you read all of the statements, whether it's Investec, Nedbank, or even the Reserve Bank itself, the MPC, it says that it's uncertain about where food inflation is going. What is good, though, from the headline inflation data, the prices that the factory floors actually pay for these goods to pass on to consumers, is that it's coming down, according to the statement that we saw today. It's something that is good. It's going to cushion off a lot of businesses and a lot of consumers because, as he said, sticky inflation is the beast we're trying to deal with here, and the high cost of living is being driven largely by the high food prices. But going forward, looking at the forecast of food inflation, they're not sure where it's going. And while energy prices have cooled off, and that's the reason why inflation was cooling off in December, both food and petrol prices were down. That is something important to note. Although, as they've said, anything could happen in the next couple of months in terms of food inflation. And it's the big driver, really, of the high cost of living that we're experiencing in emerging economies like South Africa and developed economies around the world.
There's certain things that obviously we as South Africa can't control. We can't control the conflict in Sudan. We can't control what's happening in Gaza. We've got a big decision tomorrow. We can't control what's happening in Ukraine, or who wins the American election. But there's certain things we can control, and the two things that we can control where the governor points to again that we're failing are electricity, again. We've got stage 2 joining us again in 20 minutes, and then Transnet and the ports. And those are still the two big things, and we've heard him on load shedding many times. But more and more, he's worried about the ports and supply chains.
Yes, it's something to worry about because it directly impacts on economic growth. I was not expecting the Reserve Bank to increase its forecast on economic growth from last November at the previous meeting at 0.8%. If you look, when we started at the beginning of January last year, the economic growth forecasts have been coming down from 1.5%. Now we are sitting at 0.6%, and something to worry about because those two factors eat into the economic growth forecast, and you can't really expect there to be a dent on unemployment, to deal with unemployment effectively if you are not dealing with the economic growth side of things. What is good to see is that the energy side of things, the investments that have been made by households and businesses, and also Eskom itself, they seem to be creating this whole run of energy investments that are quite good, and people have been pointing to that, something that was not expected, it was not as supposed to be, but we are far ahead than where many people expected us to be in terms of that generation capacity from solar energy and other sources of energy. Those two will remain our Achilles heel for a very, very long time, as long as we don't deal with them.
And then we've got an election coming. I think you know that. And obviously a lot of political noise. You saw Ntokozo Khumalo, our Ntokozo Khumalo, asking about the KwaZulu-Natal ANC planning a march. They're not going to come and march in Tshwane, I presume. They'll actually go to central Durban and march on the offices of the Reserve Bank there. But this is all about high interest rates. But the EFF will do the same. I don't know about the political wisdom of this. Is the Reserve Bank going to find it's going to be a little bit of a tough election?
I don't think the MPC is worried at all about it. I don't think they're losing sleepless nights over it. It's politicking as far as I can see it. They don't have a leg to stand on. The MPC has done the best it can. We've heard the push even in 2022 through the ANC conference, pushing for that Reserve Bank not to be so independent and the mandate to change into job creation. Really, I don't think they're sleeping, they have sleepless nights. What does happen, though, is that there's a lot of uncertainty as these many countries are going to be going through elections. It's no different here at home. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and investors are not worried about who is on the chair of the Reserve Bank of this particular country. They are worried about the policies. Are they going to change? And if the policies are not going to change, we might not see a lot of upsetting of the apple cart. But at the end of the day, this year, there's a lot of uncertainties with at least 4 billion people, half the world's population, going to the polls. You will never know what's going to happen, and that leads directly to which policies are going to be implemented, because investors want some sort of certainty and surety about where the policy direction is going to go.
Xolani Mbanjwa, thanks very much indeed. Our business editor, of course, on today's decision by the Reserve Bank.